Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Spark Ask the Expert. Today we're taking a slightly different approach to Ask the Expert. We wanted to continue the story of Colin Wong, founder of Tech64, and look a little deeper into the business or the nature of a hardware startup. Hello Colin, many thanks for joining me today.
Hi Greg, thank you. So
Colin, just tell me a little bit about yourself first. What's your background? Where do you come from in the business world?
Sure. So before I started Tech64, I was actually a stay-at-home mom for a few years. And before that, I had a crazy kind of career, unlike most tech startup founders, I would say. Prior to that, I was in investment banking. I worked for two major banks here in the UK.
Yeah.
And then before that, I was actually in government.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so I was like a senior government official, actually, for the government of Canada.
Okay. So that's quite a divergence then from going from investment banking into the world of technology and starting to get product out on the market. So
yeah.
What was it that actually sprung the idea for you to look at technology and think that there's a market for technology and you could apply your kind of insight into that area?
Well, it was about 5 years ago. I was a relatively new mum back then. I took my two little ones to a park and I saw a mum running around looking everywhere, for her child. And that was it. That sparked the idea. I thought, why aren't we more connected with our younger children?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay, so that's really interesting because that actually is probably every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Is you take your eyes off them for 1 second
Yep.
and they're gone. And I know in my experience that's happened quite a few times. I've got some kids that were hard to control when they were younger. They're not so easy to control now they're older. But this is something which, if you're a parent, is you can really amplify that sense of anxiety when you actually don't know where they were. So when you had this idea, what were the options that you were looking to bring as a solution for that?
Well, it took me a while to actually come to the solution that I have now today. But my initial idea was, how can I put something wearable on my child that allows them to actually call me?
Yeah.
Or for me to call them? Or for me to know where they are. So it started with that. And I basically, that very night when I had the idea, I just Googled wearable mobile phone and tracker. That was how it started.
What did that search show though? Was there a product already on the market that could do what you wanted to do?
There were products out there, not in the UK market. It was more in the Asian markets. And they did, when I asked for the samples to be sent to me and I tested them, a few did what I wanted it to do, but there was a lot more to it as well.
Yeah.
It had to be refined. Certain features weren't there that I wanted. Quality wasn't as good as I expected. So there were different things that I changed along the way.
And you settled on the watch idea. What predominantly made you settle on the watch idea then?
Well, primarily because it's wearable.
Yeah.
And for me, something wearable has to be something that, it's kind of normal. What would a normal person want to wear? And I thought, well, if a child is out there and he or she could tell the time as well, it's functional.
Yeah. So as kids from an early age, you start to teach them the time. They become familiar with watches, etc. So the next step up is, let's use something that we can use every day and interact with. Yes. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And also with the likes of the Apple Watch, Fitbit. For those, who have parents who actually have these kind of wearable devices, it's a much easier way of conveying a new product.
Yeah.
It's something that someone else already wears in the family, for example.
Oh, that's a really good point because obviously when you're bringing a product, you want to know that there's a demand there for it. So that's a really strong point that you make is, using the technology, identifying that there's a need there for a product, but also making that product very consumable, if you like, that consumers are seeing the need for that, particularly young parents as well, I would imagine.
Exactly. If the parents who are the target market or who are the ones buying the product, if they themselves don't understand very simply what the product is about, it's very hard to then sell the product to them.
Okay. So in terms of come from the world of investment banking and government to technology, what were the kind of the lessons that you needed to learn? How did you actually research the technology to make the hardware, for example? So where did you start that journey?
Again, on Google. I started by, first of all, asking for existing devices that were sold in Asia, which are the ones I found on Google. I asked them to get it sent to me, and then I started playing around with it. And that was really the first step.
And did you have in your mind then at the time the kind of design that you wanted to see? Was it something that kids had to recognize as being like the kind of, I actually like this, rather than it's just something where the parents are actually tracking me, for example, but it's seen as something tangible that the kids can have and use and interact with? Definitely.
It had to be something that the kids would wear. Basically, as you and I know with kids, if they don't like it, they're not going to wear it.
Absolutely.
So they are driving that decision. And so for me, what I thought about was it had to be a wearable that looked more adult-like.
Yeah.
My kids are always wanting to wear what I have or use what I have. So it couldn't be kiddish. It couldn't have, I didn't want the cartoons, the little fun things on it.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a target age range of, 5 to 12. These kids are actually, they're way more mature than we expect, and they want to be and emulate, the parents.
And I guess it probably gives them a little bit of sense of independence as well,
Definitely.
But also for a parent, as you mentioned, it's that 1 second when you don't know where they are is the panic point with this.
Exactly.
Is taken care of. Absolutely.
Exactly. And, in 99% of the cases, they're actually fine. But that moment of panic, it's just unnecessary, I think. In our connected world, why should we have to panic anymore? Even for that, that 1 second that'll feel like 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Let's eliminate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the watch and doing the research, were there any areas where you identified that you would need to understand a little bit more, or you would need to get backing from, or talk to engineers or talk to product guys who have brought products to market before?
Yep.
So how did those relationships start to form?
So because I studied business, I studied law. I have no background in engineering or technology. So what I do is I just ask people questions. I went to my network, starting with my friends. I know tons of engineers. So I started asking them questions. Okay. And for me, I just thought, as long as someone was able to explain to me so that I could understand, that would lead me to the next step. So I would just surround myself with people with knowledge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And were there any important parts within that kind of journey which stick out more than others, the things that you didn't consider, which these people then maybe highlighted to you? Are there any kind of like sticking points along the journey of from where you were to where you are now?
Oh gosh, so many. I couldn't even, the list is endless, in terms of what I've learned, both software, we're talking software, hardware, if I can narrow it down to even sensors, to chipsets, to mobile, telecom.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's actually really complex. It's a very simple product, but behind it, it's actually amazingly complex.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn about all of this.
I guess, there's quite a lot of information to take in there. It is, first of all, getting the device, so for example, the sensors, etc., and the software, and then actually being able to talk and communicate between all of those kind of board level electronics, through to the hardware, through to the display, through to the information. That there's quite a lot of complex activity going on there.
Yeah.
So absolutely. In terms of the technology, the refresh rate, for example, it's important to have a product, I would imagine, that's got longevity there as well. I mean, You were saying you were targeting the 5 to 12 year age group.
That's right.
So the longevity of that age group, obviously, there are going to be 5 to 12 year olds every couple of, every 5 years, somebody's entering to be a 5-year-old.
Yep.
So the longevity in the market is not something that you'd be worried about at all.
No. There will always be children in that age range.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I just go back to when you started this journey and you decided on the watch, what was it that you would say was the point of no return? So, you said you came from the world of investment and you were a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years.
Yep.
What was the point of no return when you started to look at this? One of the things that I think from my perspective, which is really interesting for me to ask you, is were you ever worried that one of the big tech giants would see the market and steal that market space?
Actually, no. And not because they couldn't do it. They definitely can do it, and they can still do it now. But if I ever had that thought, then, or if anyone had that thought of, doing something and someone big in that field would stop them, then nothing would happen. There would be no startups.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it was just, okay, let's just do it. There was nothing in the market back then, that was prominent. I mean, parents didn't even know such a product existed. I mean, the first thing I did, actually, even before I started looking and building the product, was asking parents.
Yeah.
If I built this product, would you buy it? The resounding response was, there's such a thing? Does this exist? So you can imagine, for me, that was huge. No one knew this product was out there. And so that was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of your product and your technology actually within this product, how would a tech startup or hardware startup go to making sure that their IP is protected? Were there things that you had to learn as you went along in that respect? Yes.
And so IP-wise, what I learned was, for hardware, for example, and it's expensive, right, to get a patent trademark lawyer. So that has to be taken into consideration as a startup. And so because mobile and tracking were already done, I didn't even consider the patent.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, it's already done. It's coming from China. Everyone copies everything anyway. It's so expensive. So because I can't even do it anyway because it exists, why don't I focus on the brand?
Okay.
And trademark. And I paid for a trademark, and I focused on the brand.
Okay.
And the brand for me was really important. It had to be about quality, had to be about customer service. It had to be about projecting a product that does what it says, backed with a team and a company, that was going to follow through.
Yeah. That's really interesting in the importance that you place on the brand, and the brand actually, becoming the driving force. But the strong visibility of the brand and the customer awareness that this is quality, and there is that backup support as well. They're not just a one-off purchase, for example, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yep. No, definitely. I mean, if parents want efficiency, they want things to work, right? So for me, it was always about the customer. Something will always happen with technology, but if you don't have someone right there to fix it, to find the solution, get things back up and running, it doesn't matter how good your product is.
Right.
So that was my thought.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess from perhaps a non-technical side, for me, it's about service. As a parent, what would you want?
Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
I guess now, I think probably a good time we have a quick look at maybe the watch, and we can talk through some of the aspects of why you settled on the final design, etc.
Okay, so I'll show you how the Gator watch works. You basically press this top button, and you can toggle through the time, so your child can actually tell the time on their own. You can have their name as well to personalize it. The second button here, you press it, you hold it down, and that calls the first person on the emergency contact list. Here, it's Mom. And that's it. That's how you make a call to Mom. Like so. And you answer it. Hello. That's how you speak into it. And this works almost anywhere in the world. You end the call by double tapping on the on-off button. You'll see the screen goes to black. And we've done that actually to conserve the battery. One of the most important things that we found is the importance of a long battery life. So our battery lasts for 4 days on standby. The bottom button here, you toggle it through, you can call up to 13 family and friends. So you just toggle through the directory, and whoever you find that you want to call, you hold the button down, and that makes the call. Like that. There's an SOS button on the other side. When you press the SOS button, it basically calls 3 emergency contacts until someone answers.
That's cool.
And this in itself is a tracker. And you can see on a map, on our app, where your child is. There we are. When you tap on the child's photo, you can tell where we are. So we're at Kiln Farm now.
I can see that the design is kind of very much of the moment as well. So it does appear to be quite an attractive proposition for, I imagine if I was, in that age range, this is definitely something that I would want. What made you settle on that final design, and how long before you actually got to that design?
So the design was, done primarily by a manufacturer in China. So when I first started out, actually, what I really focused on was finding a manufacturer who I could trust. This is actually very, very important. I worked in China for a few years, and so for me, what I had learned is that a lot of people who actually have a manufacturer in China, okay, who give them something even with IP, for example, if that person isn't trusted, things can go very, very wrong. So I actually spent a lot of time chatting with a lot of manufacturers, building up trust. It's something actually called guanxi, and I tell everyone about that because guanxi is relationship. When you have that with a manufacturer in China, it gets you a lot, like far, much further and much quicker than you ever would. So when I had found one particular manufacturer who I had the gut feeling, I'm like, I like this guy. I talked to him, and I said, look, this is what I want, simple, and I gave him kind of like an idea of what I wanted. And I said, just run with it. So when he had this, I loved it because it was simple. And that's what I wanted. Cool, classic, simple.
Did you use that manufacturer in the initial sense of, sourcing components and materials for the initial prototypes and designs? Was it all the same manufacturer that you went to?
I did.
So someone that you really trusted, but you'd done your research.
I did my research, but the trust was built over time. So step by step, when we were testing out, the first prototype and variation, I asked questions and I said, okay, can you make this change? How quick can you make it? And if they said to me, we can do it in 2 days, then I would wait and see. Is it really 2 days or is it 2 weeks?
Yeah.
True to their word, it would be 2 days.
2 days. And I take it, that relationship has still blossomed?
Still here.
Still here.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Just on the technical aspect of the watch, for example. So you're into happy with the design, etc. What was the next step in terms of testing and maybe standards, for example? What are those key moments that you had to mark along that journey? And could you just explain a little bit more about how you approach that?
So that is also, it's a minefield for anyone starting up in technology, and so I kind of had to rely on them as well. I had to rely on people back, in the UK as well, who knew about taking a new consumer electronic product to market. And I would basically do a lot of cross-checking. What are the standards? So for example, batteries, CE, all the markings, all the testing, all the verifications. What did the Chinese team already know?
Yeah.
Who did they use? What were the UK standards? What were the EU standards? And how did that cross-check?
Yeah.
And what I would do is even do spot checks. Again, everything is costly to do these kind of tests. So what did I do? As an example, for me, battery is important. So I found a UK company who specifically does battery testing, and I would get the report and I would cross-check it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think people probably don't understand so much, but when they're talking about bringing products along on this journey, they will go to the end solution and have the product here, and then it's kind of backtracking. Well, does it actually comply with the standards, etc.? And if you find that you have an instance where that doesn't happen, it can be very, very expensive. So that thorough research, that's definitely something you recommend that people actually really pay particular attention to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there were some things along the lines that I myself I wouldn't even know to check. And you do stumble upon things afterwards, and like you said, it's so much more time consuming and expensive to actually have to do it after the fact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of Tech 64 now, so you've come on this journey. It's starting to obviously prove very successful for you. So taking that leap and that no turning back, we're on board with this.
Yeah.
the company itself, so what have you started from, and what have you grown to at the moment?
I started with absolutely nothing. I started with an idea, and that's it. I had very little money to start it with. And now, 4 years later, I have a team of 13. They're all flexible working mums and dads, which I'm the most proud of, I think, of what I've achieved over the last 5 years. We have thousands of users of the Gator Watch, and we get emails every single day, with parents saying, thank you for creating this because, it solves a big problem for us. And our kids don't have to be on smartphones so early on.
Absolutely, that's obviously a real benefit. It's you can have a lot of peer pressure when you're in that age group, but this seems to actually be fulfilling that need as well. Yeah. In terms of the company where you are now, and if you were to look back at the old Colin, for example, pre-Tech 64, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Gosh, lots of advice. I guess I would have loved to learn more about technology, even from the beginning.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I'm actually looking at learning how to code Python.
Yeah.
A wonderful friend of mine sent me a book called Inspire. And I think everyone who does product should read this book. It's how to build products that people love. And one of the things it talked about was, even if you have no technology background, have some, just learn how to code.
Yeah.
Because even that in itself gives you a whole new insight on just technology and how people think and how a coder thinks, how an engineer might think.
It's great currency, coding. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think I would have learned to code in Python much earlier.
This poses a kind of question that I've been wanting to ask people such as yourself for a long time. Do you have to understand the technology to bring a product to market? So, for example, you could be a technology expert, and then one day you wake up and think, oh, I could do this product with this technology. Mm-hmm. Or is it better to understand that there's a product need, for example, there's a market, mm-hmm. and I know there's technology that can get me to there. Which of those two do you think is the most important, or is it a mix?
I think that having an amazing product is really only 20% of the way to success.
Yeah.
There's so much more, around this product, in building this product, getting this product to market, getting people to pay for the product, that's key if you want to make it a commercial success. And I think I've learned that over the last 5 years. I thought I had an amazing idea. I thought this watch would fly off the shelves. Everyone would be lapping it up. It'd be kind of because of the feedback that I had. No, that's not the case. So much happens along the way.
Yeah.
Even consideration of, well, how do you market it? Who do you market to? What language do you use? How do you make people understand it? Create awareness. Where's the product market fit? Is there a product market fit? And so for me, without having a technology background, but I have a business background.
Yeah.
And for me, what I just needed to do was surround myself with people who have that technical knowledge. And then I would use my business knowledge, my financial knowledge, and the networks that I've built over the years to then make this product a success.
I guess the important word there is your networks that you build, and I would imagine you're probably building more and more each day as well, based on the success that you're currently having. But for the future as well, it was interesting. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned about realizing that there was a market need for actually the watch to this age group.
Yep.
But there's a bigger market as well. You were talking to me about elderly parents. So if I'm worried about my elderly parent, for example, there's a market there for this as well.
Yeah. So when I first started, I didn't even think about that. How I thought about it was that my customers who were buying the watch for their kids started coming back and buying a second one for their parents.
Yeah.
Or a third one. And so as more and more people started doing that, it made me think, well, why are people buying a watch that I'm marketing for children, for their parents? And then so I started doing research. I started learning more. I started calling them, asking them, why did you buy it? And they said, well, there's nothing in the market out there at your price point, that works as well as it does with a long battery life.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad don't want a smartphone, They just want something simple. So that's perfect. So then it opened up a whole new market for me. And so actually I got so excited by it, I actually then thought, okay, I'm going to build that next wearable just for this aging and dementia market. A lot of users were early Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, now that I've gained all this knowledge and I have all these contacts over the years, I'm going to build a new wearable from scratch for this market.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the important things you mentioned there was price point. Did you have a price point in mind when you started, or did the price point come through the research, the material costs, etc., and then the markup, for example? Or did you have a price point that you decided, I need to hit this price point?
No, it was looking at costs. How much would it cost, as a starting point to actually get this to market, and then adding on, a little bit of marketing and and then kind of saying, okay, well, once I hit that price point, what kind of margin do I want to make for the business to be sustainable? And then also, what is kind of like a psychological kind of figure that would make or break a parent's decision on buying it? As we all know, the 99 mark, is always a psychological, buying point. Anything that's $9.99, whatnot. So I thought 99 works.
Yeah.
99 fit the criteria, So we would be able to profit enough, but yet parents would want to buy it as well.
Okay.
And I wanted to make it affordable.
Yeah.
It's also pointless to kind of create a product that no one could afford.
Yeah, absolutely. The demand is there, but you have to take all things into consideration, I would imagine, in terms of the design, which looks fantastic, but then also the price point and how to, as you mentioned, marketing, getting that message out to the masses.
Exactly.
So where do you see the journey continuing? Because just in the talk that we have had, there are things turning in my mind where, you're talking about elderly and dementia. We're talking about wearables within the medical profession, for example. Definitely for older people, etc. Is that an area you're going to explore more, do you think?
Well, I'm definitely building this next wearable for the aging dementia market, but there are so many other markets out there. It's some I now know about, lone worker market, for example, like you said, emergency services. But I'm sure there's others out there that I've not even thought about. And that's why I love going out, networking, meeting people. And I was at the Wearable Technology Show yesterday, and I met someone who said, well, there's actually a need for even waste management services to look after their staff. Have you thought about that?
Really?
Like, no, I haven't. And a week before, I had actually, so this is great. So I went to do some mentoring for a secondary school, just to mentor and, kind of tell year 9 students what I do for a living. And I asked them a question. I said, are you addicted to your smartphone? 99% yes, and they were honest about it. And then I said, well, what if I gave you one of my watches for a month, so you could only contact your family and friends, but nothing more? Their response to me was, I would love that.
Really?
Because I could have a break. And I could hang out with my friends more. I could be more active.
Yeah.
So for me, here I'm thinking I could never sell this to secondary school kids.
It's like they're being conditioned already.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, got me thinking. Yeah. So it's an interesting, there's so many different use cases for something simple where you can just call someone, a family member, but nothing else.
Yeah.
Simplicity is actually not a bad thing.
Absolutely. And I know from experience with an elderly parent, simplicity is always the best approach.
Yeah.
And it's not just to do with the fact that they are, they're not familiar with the technology. It's the actual practicality of using the technology, for example. So simplicity is definitely the best approach.
Yeah. And I'll give you another example as well. So a dad wrote a review for us. He had bought my Gator watch for his son. But then one evening, he decided to go for a run. And instead of bringing his phone, he brought his kid's Gator watch. He was like, it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know? He just needed his family to know where he was. He could call home if he needed anything, and that's it. Yeah, he didn't need to be notified of emails or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen the dad in the gym on the smartphone, etc. Totally not doing what he should be doing when he should be actually exercising. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Colin, really thankful for you coming along today and talking to us about the business and where you're going, and obviously the success you're having. We'd love to have you back at some point in the future to continue the story. So I'd just like to say thanks very much for joining, and we look forward to talking to you again in the very near future.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening to this Ask the Expert from Design Spark. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon.